Hey everyone, welcome to Inverted World. I'm your host Dylan Roth, and today I have a special guest. He's a huge inspiration to me and this channel. He always really knows how to brighten your day in this crazy political climate that we're in. You probably know him by his channel, John Talks. He's actually demonetized recently. He switched over to his new channel, John Talks 2. I always go to his channel for daily news updates. It's really a great place to laugh. So without further ado, please welcome John Poma Jr.
Hey, Dylan. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the intro very much. Thank you.
Now, I wanted to have you join the show because while there are a lot of viral YouTubers out there, I just think you have such a unique success story on YouTube, and especially with political content. And I'm really just excited to hear more from you about these meme videos that you put on your channel. You get all these viral clips, and then you find really funny movie clips to add to the end, and I just think it's a very interesting process. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got started on these videos?
It's kind of a little bit of a interesting story how I kind of got to the place that I'm at. At least, the funny thing is I never got on YouTube thinking that with the plan that I'd be doing political content. I originally started out, I got on YouTube because I found out about this idea of passive income and I needed to make more money. So I've been very upfront about this when people ask me, and it was always about the money. No, I'm kidding. I really do enjoy making videos, and it is something that I was like, well, if I could do something creative and I can make money, and passively make money, and I never even had the idea of quitting my job, but it was just this idea of like, I just would like to make a little money on the side, because at that point in my life, I was kind of living paycheck to paycheck, and so I just started making videos on YouTube, had no idea what I was doing. Most of them, if not all of those, from like 2016 to 2017, I was posting very sporadically and with no consistency at all, and really no plan, no niche, no nothing. It was just kind of a little bit all over the place. And then 2018, I really centered and focused my channel around Star Wars.
I saw Star Wars The Last Jedi last night, and we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk spoilers. We're gonna just talk about it, okay? Because there's a lot to talk about.
Things that were going on with The Last Jedi, and there was also some, somewhat cultural implications with that movie a little bit as well. SJW elements and so on and so forth. So I did Star Wars content for a little bit, and then I brought in my niche to entertainment. And then 2020 came around, the pandemic, and entertainment really there wasn't anything going on with entertainment. So it was kind of a point where it's like, well, okay, now I've got to do something different here if I want to continue to make videos on YouTube. And that ultimately got me to the place where, I was doing commentary on politics a little bit. And then I realized that, I don't particularly like being on camera. Like, it's not something that I ever really enjoyed. I wasn't necessarily someone who was like, oh, I've got to be on camera and I want to be the center of attention, and or I want, the cloud or whatever. Like, in fact, I kind of like the idea of, I'm perfectly fine being behind the scenes and not being out there, especially more than ever. It's like, if I don't have to be on camera, then I don't mind, because really for me, it's more about the creative aspect of things. And so, this is all not to say that I don't care about politics, because I do think politics are extremely important, and I think it's something that people, the broad population, I think, underestimates the importance of politics. It's something that also scratches scratches a creative itch that I have too. So it's like I can be creative with these videos, as well as kind of just show people what's going on too, and just kind of, in a very concise format. So it's not necessarily consuming, your whole day to watch a video of mine. It's real quick, and hopefully you're not depressed. Hopefully it's informative and it's funny. Because at this point, I don't like, I'm consciously not wanting to add any more misery into this world than there already is, or any more depression or anything like that. It's funny how, when it comes to YouTube strategy, there's two ways of going about it. The one way is, you can have an extremely firm vision of exactly what it is that you want to do, and you can push and push and push that vision. And you have a crystal clear vision of exactly what it is that you want. The other thing is that sometimes you're in an experimental phase and you don't really exactly know where you want to go with something. And so you're just putting out content and videos, and some videos hit. And it's almost like your audience, if you listen to them, they will direct the flow of your channel. And so I would say for idealist, the idealist creator, there still is a part of me that is that, and I will go out and I will do my own thing and I will push it. Maybe it will fail, maybe it will succeed. But if you want to succeed on YouTube, just practically speaking, I'd say it's very important to listen to your audience and the direction that they want the ship to go. And this is just like, it's a more practical and less artistic way of looking at it. But in the same way a business would want to listen to the customer. And if a customer is saying, we want more of this, a business-minded person would think, okay, well, I'm going to give you, if we're selling this, I'm going to give you more of this. And I don't think people are really that honest about that side of things. That's kind of how I would say I would give advice, like just practical advice to anybody on YouTube. Like, if you want to build a successful channel, listen to your audience, especially in those beginning days, really to respond to every single comment and appreciate every single subscriber. They're why ultimately your channel is going to fail or succeed. So anyhow, that's like a very long roundabout answer.
Well, it's certainly a journey when you become a YouTuber, and yeah, I definitely struggled with knowing what exactly is going to hit the zeitgeist, like how to connect with my audience. And you just have to look at it as a game. And what I've learned, because I come from a very liberal background growing up, but then I developed more of an interest in conservative politics, and that's what I wanted my YouTube channel to be about. But as time went on, I'm like, how do I shape my channel in a way? Like, it was a process of finding my voice. And
yes,
at first I was putting out a lot of protest videos because I was very involved in activism. I was protesting the mandates in New York City. Like, we were marching in the thousands on the streets, and I was getting footage of all this. I was doing a little bit of my own commentary, interviews, like man on the street interviews. But I faced a lot of censorship, especially like being a Trump supporter, covering all of these controversial subjects, and just the environment was so heated. And when we moved out of New York City for a little bit to kind of get away from all the craziness in South Carolina, I was like, how do I kind of take all those traumatic experiences and make it, how do I focus my channel on something where I can actually laugh at this climate, this crazy political climate. So I wanted to start doing more commentary, but then I noticed that my commentary was getting censored as well. And I looked at your channel and I was like, wow, like when it's just focused on humor and you're making jokes and you're just showing the things that the liberals are saying, that Biden is saying, and what the news commentators are saying, you know, like this is all stuff that like YouTube would just promote, even if you're not like putting your own spin on it. Your channel gave me a lot of inspiration, and I was like, maybe I should do some of my own memes and play around. You know, I have a passion for movies, clearly the way that you do, and I relate to movies, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of truth that you can get out with just such simple memes. And I think that you have a really interesting way of connecting with your audience. And like when I look at your channel, it's like turning over to the political cartoon section of the newspaper or the funnies. Like, you know, humor is just sometimes it can be a really great remedy. And my channel did actually pick up with that method of putting out my own types of memes. And then I wanted to start doing my own commentary again. So I was like, okay, how do I take like a more centrist approach and kind of looking at ways to get around the censorship? I can put in some memes, like, you know, have a unique commentary that looks at things objectively instead of ideologically on one side or the other. And so there's just many different ways to do that. And we're just in a time right now where meme culture is just a very simple way to get the truth across.
Yeah. It's almost like in the same way symbols are used to simplify language or ideas, rather. Memes are similar to that. It's kind of like you can kind of communicate. You can make it a little bit more concise with a meme, and of course, it's like you said, with that idea of ultimately, it's like humor is behind it. You know, like memes aren't meant to be serious. If there was a serious meme, maybe it ceases to be a meme. I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things where we associate memes with humor, and so I think memes have become this like extra segment or extra thing of now human communication, maybe that comes along with the digital age. But like you said, I mean, it's probably more rooted in like cartoons or you know, it's kind of like very similar to that. Like it's not necessarily illustrations, but it is taking images and words and you're communicating something that is funny.
Yeah, you've created a language, so to speak, with your own style of editing and music and jokes and all that, and it's helped me, and I'm sure a lot of your audience, just become very familiar with your style.
I saw, like, I was inspired by, I was seeing like Memology, you know, his videos. I liked his format. I liked what he was doing.
Right.
And so it was kind of like, okay, well, how can I do something similar, but also I want to, you know, I don't want to just do like a direct rip off of what he's doing. I like his format in some ways, but like, well, I like his format, period. But it's like, I've got to make it my own, you know, I've got to do something different with it. And so that's where, like you said, you know, it's a matter of, you know, finding your own voice, right? Finding your own way to communicate. That's what's going to make you the most interesting that you possibly can be to any potential viewer, is if you are being you. And that even comes through, of course, in the editing, the choices that you make, even if you're not on camera. That is, I think, that's the best thing that you have to offer to anybody, is really yourself, you know. But
yeah.
it takes it takes some vulnerability though too, because there's the fear of now when it comes to editing, it's a little different, right? But I can still hide behind my computer and edit, so it's a little less vulnerable. But there still is that thing, like when you create something, if you or I created a film, and we're really putting ourselves out there in some way, like this is something that really truly came from us, right? It's like the reception of that, it's almost difficult to not take it somewhat personally, if you truly are putting out something that is, from your heart or from you. But I do think those are also the things that are going to stand out more than anything. If it truly is something personal and vulnerable versus, you're just copycatting something else that you've seen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you and I are kind of similar. Like, as someone that got into making videos just from the passion of editing and wanting to learn Adobe Premiere, like editing has really been my strong suit. So yeah, for a while I was really liking stuff where I'm not on camera. I did a lot of montage videos using different narration. That's how I started, and just getting really good at combining visuals with music without me being in it. And yeah, like the process of being on camera, like it's definitely something you just get better at with practice as I'm learning. And I want to keep doing more commentary. But yeah, there's really there's an art to editing that you really can get into and love. And I do feel like sometimes I'm just doing it purely for the fun of editing. I'm not doing it for the attention or the likes, or I just want people to see that art of editing that I'm capable of.
Yeah. No, and I've looked at your work, and you do really good. Like I can tell you're somebody that takes a lot of pride in what you do. You can see the work, and you can see the heart behind it. You really put a lot of work into what you're doing, and that it really shows. And I think that's you can't fake that. You just
thank you.
It's not something that like I watch your stuff and I'm like, okay, yeah, he's been doing this for some time, and he knows what he's doing. It takes time to get there. You've put in the hours. How long have you? How many years have you been editing, would you say?
Well, this is my second channel, Inverted World, but the first one that I had, Neo Hippie, which just used to be called Dylan Roth, I started that in 2015. As a teenager, I was really into people like Alan Watts and Charles Bukowski, like, philosophical thinkers. And I was, in the early days, the first videos I was putting out were those narration videos with Alan Watts. Okay. And I would make little montage, like almost like the motivational video type of genre. It got some attention, but I was like really just learning editing, and I didn't think that this would eventually become a passion of mine. But I kind of had a passion for film in general, like since I was in middle school. Like I think I always had this dream to be a filmmaker. But then when YouTube started to take off more and more, like content creation really is something that became more like you can really just do your own thing without any rules. And then eventually with enough subscribers, like you can make money off of it. At the time, I was more thinking along the lines of working within the bounds of the system, that if you want to be a filmmaker, like, oh, you got to make it in Hollywood somehow, or
maybe go to film school and kind of go through this path.
Yeah, and now you can just do whatever you want. There's really no limits. That really changed the whole course of my filmmaking aspirations, and then I realized I don't really want to put out stuff just to entertain people. Like, I want to get the truth out. I want to contribute to something meaningful and feel like I'm doing something to change the world and to help people be informed. So just being a filmmaker turned into really wanting to tell the truth, whether it's like philosophically or politically. I try to find ways of kind of combining the two more recently, because I just think there's a lot of nuances to the political climate that not everybody is seeing, that there's psychological impact, and how the collective mindset produces this political climate that we're in has so much to do with what's going on internally, psychologically, that we manifest. And I kind of want to draw attention to that. But
that's interesting. It's kind of the idea of like art imitating life imitating art, or kind of like this wave going back and forth, where it's like the media we consume affects, you're saying it affects our mind, and then also that reverberates out into the world, which is kind of like almost like a sound. Are you saying, is that kind of like the idea that you're saying? Or?
Well, the way I look at it is our collective mindset makes manifest the leaders that we detest. So,
okay.
There was a time when I think the collective wanted a leader like Trump, because everything was just so screwed up, and then Trump was able to kind of throw a monkey wrench into the system and show like, this is what's going on. This is what Americans have been asleep to for so long. Mm-hmm. And there's always been like conspiracy theorists, but I think Trump kind of introduced the corruption to like the whole collective, where more and more people are now aware of it. These things that were just labeled as conspiracy are now in the mainstream. It's so obvious, and now we have Biden. I think because like Trump kind of gave us a taste of what we should be awake to. It wasn't the really the be all end all. Like, we also have to do the work in waking up and fighting. But then I think, and then there was fraud, there was all this other stuff, but I don't think we were ready to take control of our country again. I just think there's still a lot of things we need to wake up to. And I think more importantly, we haven't like really addressed all of our trauma. And the reason why I think the left gravitates towards like critical race theory, or these ideas about white supremacy and the oppression, I think all of that is due to guilt and trauma. The Black Lives Matter, it showed all the white guilt that people have, the ones marching in these movements. And then with critical race theory, like, you might say that there are some grains of truth to that, but it has a lot to do with the trauma that we haven't fully addressed. And with conspiracies, I think understanding that there's an oppressive hand, which is what conspiracy theorists and also like the people on the left do too. Like, we all sense that there's some that there's oppression right now, but I think that if you've had some sort of trauma or some guilt in your past life, you've kind of been hardened to recognize like where authority figures have taken advantage of you. Mm-hmm. I've talked about this on my channel. Like, I experienced sexual abuse, pedophilia. Mm-hmm. So when because that happened to me, I kind of had this trauma that naturally made me distrust authority figures. So then you see Epstein, what's going on with that, and you look at different forms of systemic oppression from powerful elites. Like, you can see all of that from a mile away. I couldn't just ignore all of that. So I think that's why, like, we have a tendency to be more attracted to conspiracy, why we have a tendency to question authority figures.
Yeah, I think it's funny how we have like these knee-jerk adverse reactions to, like, let's just say conservatives collectively or whatever. There just doesn't seem to be any room for nuance anymore or conversation about anything. But that is, I think, part of where the healing process in some, I'm not saying that, the country's ever going to come together and sing Kumbaya and, we're going to be absolutely unified. But what's been lost is this ability to even remotely try to understand where people are coming from.
Right.
And this is something that I look back at my younger self, and I think when you're especially when I was a young man, you're very susceptible to extremes and extreme ideas. At least for me, that was the case. And I think that's why you find young men gravitating towards strong figures, or like people like an Andrew Tate, or people that are very controversial, that paint the world in a very black and white way. This is truth, this is false, and I'm not saying that there's not an objective truth, or that there's no objectivity, but all I'm saying is that there are some things that are not so clear-cut black and white. And also, if you want to have an impact on society, I think it's so important to understand where people are coming from. Because if you're just shouting at somebody, or not even shouting, but you're just stating your position and you're not even open to understand where they're coming from, like, how in the world can you even think you're going to influence them?
Yeah.
Because if you don't even understand their position, then how can you I don't want to use I don't want to say like dissect their position, but it's just more so an understanding of like their position. So you can logically say like, okay, well, this is why I think that you're right here, you're wrong here. Because a lot of the things that people hold to, there is some, even at the very least, there is some grain of truth to it. Like you were saying, like critical race theory, or, the positions that people have. It's not so much that there's obviously something going on there. There's a reason why people think and believe the way they do. If we're just outrightly dismissive of what people have to say to begin with, they're just going to shout louder. They're just going to, it's actually going to reinforce their beliefs. Right. And again, some of those beliefs might very well have truth. There's some form of truth there.
Right.
It's like liberalism. The idea of being liberal, or being generous or giving is not necessarily a bad position. It's a bad position when you're dealing with other people's money and tax dollars and you're spending freely. But then again, we could look at the conservatives and we can look at the or Republican presidents and the amount of spending that they've done, if we want to take it to a monetary element, and say like, well, they're not exactly that conservative either. There's some truth there's something going on there.
Yeah.
Where you just can't be, if you're just dismissive of where people are coming from. I guess is what I'm saying, is like, if you're not at least able to hear them, you're not going to be able to understand them, let alone influence them. You're just not.
Yeah. And it's being able to look at both sides objectively and see where there's truth in the middle, that I think is really important, because it seems like the system is set up for the left and the right just to hate each other without like unifying. And I've said before, like, what we can unify on is much more of a threat to the establishment and the powers that be than the things that divide us. They want us to stay divided,
Yes.
and not to listen to each other. And so over, like I was a very like diehard Trump supporter when I woke up to like what the conservatives were right about and like what liberals were wrong about. But then over time, I became less ideological and saw that it's not really that black and white. Like there's craziness on the right just as much as there is on the left. And like I didn't like the fact that Trump pushed the vaccine. I don't like the fact that he still doubles down and doesn't correct where he stands on that. Like there's a lot of reasons not to be attached to his side completely. And yeah, there's so much hypocrisy you'll see on the left, but then there are some grains of truth on that side as well. Like that's where we can come together and listen to each other, and like you said, not to be dismissive. So I think sometimes like I just saw this comedian last week, Tyler Fisher. He's really a genius in how he can make fun of the left, but then he was also kind of making fun of the right a little bit too. Like he does great impressions of Trump and RFK Jr. and he was, saying like I'm not I don't care that, like my audience is conservative or that I'm doing this show for the Daily Wire, which is conservative. Like I don't care about any of that. His attitude is like, I'm going to make fun of all of it. So
yeah.
And so just to kind of get back to your channel, something I really wanted to touch on was your Time to Leave Earth series, and it's all of the most ridiculous headlines of the day. I watch it every time you post. And what exactly gave you the idea to start doing those?
Gosh, you do so many of these videos, and they all kind of blend into each other.
You've done thousands. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm feeling, this is what people, I'm old now. I'm getting old. But I think maybe it was Sweden, or it was one of those countries over there where they were designing this capsule or thing that you could go into, and it's kind of a Futurama thing where you could, you go into the machine and, basically begin the process of ending your life.
Oh,
and this was like, it was like a pod. It was like this pod that people go into and lay. I don't know if it's like a gas chain, whatever it was. And I think that's, I don't think I had like the whole "it's time to leave Earth" thing. I guess people could think of it in a number of different ways. It wasn't, I didn't come up with the title for that. Because of that. I mean, maybe I did subconsciously, but I just thought like, man, like this world is just getting so crazy. And so I think I might have even like, maybe the first video I did was based entirely off of that right title, "It's Time to Leave Earth." And then I had the idea of more to create, have a bunch of different headlines that would kind of be under the same idea of like just crazy, insane news. And my idea is more like getting off the planet, is just like leaving Earth in that way, not offing yourself. I'm not ever recommending that for anybody, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But it's like, maybe we should look for another place to go or whatever, jokingly speaking. Maybe it's reinforcing an escapist mentality or something.
Well, it's really, it tends to be what we're all feeling. I mean, a lot of us want to fight, but then sometimes it's just like why the fuck are we still doing this? This is just crazy, So,
yeah. I think I hate to say it, like I'm kind of I'm really cynical about. I'm more cynical than ever about the individual and the power of the individual to change things. I'm not saying that it's an impossible thing. With that said, I'm cynical about the idea of a population coming together to make change. I would love to see us, because if you think about it, if we all came together under just the simple idea of we want lower taxes. Like, we could easily, like, if everybody in America unified under this idea of like, we will not pay whatever percentage, if collectively we could actually agree on a number, right? Where it's like, we will not pay over this percentage in federal taxes.
Right.
Whatever that would be.
Yeah.
If we all band together, the government has no choice. They're at the mercy of the people at that point, and they have to listen to us because, it's still, it's a democracy. But the problem is, like you said, we are so incredibly divided, and this game will continue to be played out. Here, if lawmakers truly cared about us, or politicians really cared, they would really all be looking to benefit us as much as possible. In the most simplest way, we could start with that idea of taxes. But right now, of course, we are in such tremendous debt, like in an astronomical amount of debt because of our ridiculous spending, government spending. And I said this before, but if you or I spent our money the way the government spends our money, like we'd all be bankrupt. It's just it's just it's absolutely irresponsible the way the government has handled taxpayer dollars. But anyways, that's my big thing. I feel like that's the, if we're going to talk about like the most pragmatic, simple thing, it's like, could we just come together? I think we could all agree. It's not like it's not really an extremely moral issue of any kind. It's just one simple issue where if we all band together, we could probably create change. But again, I'm just very cynical about the idea of us being unified about anything. And I think the older I get, the more I'm just like looking to like, okay, how can I, first of all, be the best possible version of myself? And then my own personal four corners. It's like, how can I positively impact the people, the circle that is around me? And other than that, I just don't have a whole lot of, I'm not holding out for hope that things are going to get better, which probably sounds very, a little bit pessimistic, but I guess that's just how realistically I see it playing out. If it does turn around, great, but I guess I'm not holding my breath or having this expectation of it.
Yeah,
so
I know what that feeling is like a lot of the time. I get, pessimistic. Like it's hard to see things getting better, but every now and then, like I'm surprised by how many people are waking up. Like more and more people are recognizing like, oh wow, like Trump was right about a lot of things. Like I have no reason to vote for Biden. Like a lot of leftists may not even vote this year, or a lot are now like might actually vote for Trump. Like there's there's a lot of awakening happening, and people are like recognizing that these things labeled as conspiracy are now true. Like it's all out in the open. And I think the more damage that the elites are doing, the more we're seeing like the left implode on itself, the more we're seeing the empire as we know right now falling. It's not going to sustain itself the more that it's exposed. But then people can see all of that, but then how do you fight back against it is really the question. And a lot of times we can feel helpless, but I think a lot of what it comes down to is if we can't really change like what's going on with ourselves, like I call it doing the shadow work, like Carl Jung,
yeah,
calls the shadow. Instead of doing that work on ourselves and addressing that trauma in ourselves, we're just projecting all the problems onto the elites and all the powerful people. And I think that's kind of where there's a stuck energy in this great awakening, in this battle, because we still haven't resolved all the fucked up things about ourselves to actually like have the courage and to not take the abuse anymore. I think we're so seduced by all the forms of pleasure out there, all the distractions and all that. Like, we're more comfortable with all those distractions and being divided. You know, it's easier to like blame one side or the other instead of thinking like, oh, like what can I do to make the world a better place? Like, how can I try to think, how can I serve? And I think to just keep waking up as many people as possible, how we can keep creating dialogue in order to bridge that gap. And I think the more we unify on those issues, like, you know, I'm doing a documentary about child sex trafficking, about child abuse. Like, this is something that both sides can agree is a problem we need to overcome. So how do we just like put all of the ideology and the politics aside and just work on resolving the issues that we can all agree on?
That should be like blanket, you know, across like 100%. Like it's kind of like if you take all those things that we should be agreed upon, you know, like or for the most part, you know, like what you're talking about, like, you know, sexual abuse, child trafficking, you know, 100% of the population should be anti that. Instead of like, if we could just focus on the common ground areas versus the areas where we disagree, you know, I think that's where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there's potential here that we could actually do something.
What was your background before you started your channel? Like, is there stuff that you're doing on the side as an artist?
As a kid, I you know, my parents told me that I was always drawing. You know, like I was like one of those kids where it was like you could just give them a, you know, piece of paper and a pencil and I would just you know, I could just draw. So I always was like that kid in the class that could draw, you know, and I got that label of artist, you know, pretty early on. As I got older, I just saw art as a much more broader thing itself, and the whole idea of art. Sun Tzu has the book, The Art of War, right? Like you know, you could think of the art of, you know, I suppose there's probably a book out there, that The Art of Politics, you know, or whatever. How I wound up, like I was experimenting with music, and unfortunately I destroyed like all of my rap songs that I made.
Oh, that's a whole new side of you that I really want to see now.
Yeah. It's a shame that, I mean, I would probably never show any of this stuff to anybody, but it wasn't gangster rap, that's for sure. Shortly after that, though, I became a born-again Christian, and so it was kind of like I didn't really do any art for, I mean, probably nearly 10 years, you know, just because of I had a very kind of a limited and maybe somewhat fundamentalist perspective, you know, when it came to Christianity. And I didn't necessarily, I was never really encouraged to, I would say there didn't really seem to be a place for like artists in kind of the community that I was in. So
interesting.
And Yeah, and I think it's I think Christianity doesn't really know what to do with artists. I didn't really create for like I didn't do it for like 10 years or so. I really didn't draw a whole lot, didn't do anything, which is something that I wish I did do a little bit more. I think I almost felt like it was I don't know, like just not worthwhile or valuable. So but then I started doing I started illustrating picture books or kids books, you know, on my own. Is more just like this idea of like self-publishing, and it's still something that I would like to pursue. I've almost got a book. I'm like a few pages done from this book that I've been working on. It's been a struggle. So I'm always I love creativity. I love creating. It's something I enjoy. And in fact, I think broadly, I think we're all meant to create. I think from very early on, we're kind of conditioned to believe that, oh, that person is the artist, you know, just because they, you know, maybe they've just got a little more hours in the game. Artists' brains they are wired differently. But that's not to say that it's still like something like the idea of creation and creating something is restricted to just a few people. I think it's a very therapeutic and cathartic thing to create. And I've kind of like had this hypothesis of like, I wonder how much destruction is in this world, how much chaos and just evil is the result of us not creating. You know,
right?
Because the act of creation is constructive, whatever it might be, a piece of music or whatever. But there's probably some level of introspection. There's some level of like you're doing some inner work going on there.
You are, for sure.
Like if I didn't have the outlet of art, I just like I don't know if I would still be. You know, I don't know if maybe I'd be here still. You know, it's just been something that I'm extremely grateful for in my life. You know?
Yeah. And it seems like like you said, your idea of art has changed over time. I look back at where I started and I went through different phases, and I've never had like just one phase throughout my artistic career. Like I look back and I'm like, I don't want to do something that is from that phase. Like that was the old me. Like I keep trying to think like what is the new me, because it's the process of discovering your voice, and then you know like there was a time when I was a little bit passionate in this one phase, but then I became more passionate in this next phase. And then I'm just endlessly figuring out like what I feel like I'm meant to do. I still don't feel like I've arrived at that point where you're like, oh, you stick to this phase and this is what you're meant to do for the rest of your life. Like it's an ever evolving process.
Yeah.
When I was doing activism and filming videos from the protest, I was like, oh, this is it. Like I should just do this. But then I was like, okay, I ran into some censorship. Like I had to like start to change the format of my channel, and like maybe I should do commentary on this and make all of my commentary focused on like current news and current topics, which I actually still do a little bit of. But I also don't just want to do things because it's topical and it's what everybody's talking about. You know, I see like a lot of commentators, like when I'm doing research for my videos, a lot of commentators are just talking about the same stuff. And you know, with like some unique takes on it, but I think a lot of people just want to put out stuff because it's the trend.
Oh, absolutely.
I just like, I want to, so that's why like my style has changed. Like I want to have a unique take on what's going on. I really do want to get deeper into stuff. So now it's like I take a little more time with my scripts, with my videos. Like if it takes a whole month for me to put out a video. Like the time you put into that, and if you really enjoy doing it, then you're doing it for yourself. You're not just doing it for your audience, for everybody else. But it's good to like still know your audience, and you just keep experimenting and see what clicks. But that's the fun of it.
Obviously, I've got some complaints when it comes to YouTube.
We all do.
Monetize my main channel, but you know, and I'm sure a lot of people do. It's a tough thing as like a YouTube creator, because I think artists tend to be terrible at business, you know, generally speaking, or they're just not, it's not part of the skill set. You know, vice versa, business people tend to be, you know, they tend not to have an artistic bone in their body, you know, and whether or not that, say like it's because they haven't cultivated that or they weren't born with it. There's probably a little bit of truth to maybe to both sides, right? But that's the struggle, you know, because I really feel like I had to put on my business cap at some point. I had to cultivate a business mentality, because, you know, being an artist, it was just like you're so self-critical about your own work. You're often just in your thoughts too, and you know, artists just have like a certain personality that is almost you know, we can be our own worst enemies in terms of production, right? And in terms of you know, just being perfectionists. And it's a good quality to have, because like that's how really great art is created, is because artists tend to be so like we're so self-critical and perfectionistic, and we have so much scrutiny as to what is good art and bad art, and especially with our own art. But it's also like detrimental to getting anything done. I guess what I'm trying to simplify here is like get to is like YouTube is it prizes quantity over quality, I think. And like you were saying, you know, It's like you want to have a unique take, you want to have a unique perspective on the work you're doing. You know, whereas like ultimately, you know, the unfortunate thing though is like whoever gets to the story first and just kind of like rattles off their, you know, their same talking points or whatever,
right,
is probably going to get the bulk of the views, because they're first or whatever. And you know, the quality it's not so much about the quality, but it is about the trending story. It is about that thing. It's not about the take. And so it's not YouTube's algorithm. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, they're looking at it from a business perspective, of course, you know, it's tailored for them to get the most views possible, to keep people on the platform the longest, for them to make the most money.
Right.
But with that said, unfortunately, with the rare exception, it's like quantity. That's the thing I've found, is that, you know, quantity is probably a lot of times quantity is going to win over quality.
Yeah, the algorithm is designed to, you know, bring those trending topics forward, and it's very hard to like be the creative person and then also focus on the marketing. And me and my girlfriend, like, we're, you know, it's a 2-person team. I mean, and she'll sometimes help me with the scripts, and I'm doing the editing. But that's why, like, all these successful YouTubers, like, they have a team of people to really, you know, not only work on the content, but the branding of that of that content. And so
the big guys, the really big guys do, for sure.
Yeah,
like they definitely do.
Trying to balance all that is very challenging. It's very difficult, because you put your heart and soul into your message, what you want to communicate, or what art you want to put out there, and then you're like, well, it's just not clicking with the audience or with the algorithm. Like, that is probably the most frustrating thing about YouTube for me. So I had to figure out how to streamline my process too, because Da Vinci said work is never finished, or art is never finished, it's always abandoned. Because if I'm just being transparent and honest, you know,
and I've heard this from a lot of people, you know, they work their way out of their 9 to 5 into another 9 to 5. Like
Right.
once you start doing something as a job, you know, once you start doing something for your means of income or whatever, it just you know, it takes on a different meaning. I know that ultimately, like the lasting value of it, like I don't, you know, you make so many videos, the videos that I do, and their effect is, you know, it's going to be for the moment. It's going to be for, you know, but people will forget them in a day, you know, maybe, more than likely. You know, there's a part of, I think, part of artists that want to create, like, we want to create something that will stand the test of time, something that will be, you know, yeah, it won't be around for 1,000 years or, you know, I mean, that'd be great, right? But we still want to create something that is going to make an impact, you know, like
Right.
on the world, you know, and so there's a part of me is like, all these little decisions that you make, you know, I know, you know, it's like when it comes to editing, there's always like these decisions that you're making, you're going back and forth, or you're, you know, you're making all these little tiny decisions, and they take up mental energy. And so like by the time the day is done, you know, I've probably used the bulk of my creative, you know, my most creative energy, you know, that's gone. and
Mhm.
I still like to, you know, I'll do things afterwards, but it takes the creative process is just, it's a different kind of work, and it's a different kind of labor, you know, and it's not like you're physically tired. It's not that you're physically exhausted, but you know, there, and I'm not saying that it isn't a labor of love either, but you know, if you're on a schedule and you're showing up to do the work, like it takes mental, mental energy being expended there. So
Yeah, showing up is really half the battle. And as we talk about your creative process, because when I was doing some of my own meme videos, like I found like, oh, I do need to work on my sense of humor. It was actually very good practice. A difficult process was like finding the right clip or the right meme to go with whatever news clip I'm showing. Like, is that ever challenging for
my
you? Like
gosh,
finding the right joke?
sometimes it'd be probably embarrassing if I told, like,
Yeah.
if I told people how long sometimes it takes, like I'm not timing it out, but I'm just saying, like, that is, you know, often that's kind of the final piece of the video. Sometimes I know where it's going, where like, oh, this would be really good.
Right.
But also you get in the habit of like, oh, gosh, you know, that'd be good, but I've used that so many times. I don't want to use it again. Like, I
Yeah.
want to find something new. I want to find something different. Like, I don't want to just regurgitate what I've done.
Right.
Because sometimes I've gone through phases where it's like, where I am kind of just going through the motions, you know, as they would say. So, but yeah, sometimes that's the trickiest thing, man, is just finding the right clip.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and sometimes you know exactly what you want, but you just can't find the dang clip on YouTube, you know, and that's also a pain in the neck
Yeah.
as well. But you know, I mean, I'm saying pain in the neck very loosely, because it's like I said, it's still,
Yeah.
you know, it's beat any 9 to 5 job that I've worked at. So,
Yeah. No, it's a
you
blast.
know,
I
but
mean, yeah, it looks like you're just having a blast. Like, looking for stuff. It probably, the challenge is also like just having like a good movie memory. Like I would have to kind of scroll through clips to get ideas, but then my friend or my girlfriend will sometimes say, it's like, oh, don't you remember a scene from that movie from a while back? I'm like, oh yeah, and they're like, oh, that fits really well. But if someone didn't help me remember that movie, like that idea would never come to fruition. Like just
yeah,
remembering movies and
yeah,
being a movie buff probably helps a lot.
absolutely. Yeah, that's the one thing where it's like, wow, all of my vast catalog of like movies that I've watched and like pop culture references and all this stuff like that I've kind of always thought was like meaningless knowledge that I've accumulated in my brain. It actually came to use somehow, like, you know, like I'm actually able to use it, which is, you know, it's kind of funny how that works. And so you kind of never know, like the things that you're picking up and the things that you've watched in movies too, like it's all probably like there's to some extent there's no, well, I'm not saying there's no originality because there is, you know, but to some extent we're always borrowing and we're always taking from something, you know, and I'm sure things that you've watched that it's going to inform your process in some way, shape or form. So it's kind of like sometimes you might think like, oh, you know, at least for me, it's like it could be a Karate Kid sort of thing where sometimes you're like learning something or you think it was kind of meaningless to learn at one point.
Right.
And then like later on down the road, you know, it all comes together where, you know, you've seen the original Karate Kid, right?
Yeah, of course. Wax on, wax off. It was meaningless, he thought at the time, but then it was such an important skill to learn later on. And that's just kind of like how our pop culture references throughout history, like why they stand the test of time. Like there's a reason why lines from movies really, you know, just, you know, carry, you know, you remember it for generations because in so many instances they just hold up, and you know when it's like appropriate to quote a movie or a TV show because it's just so reflective of what's going on in our lives. And writers, when they put their ideas into these movies and shows, and you know that they're actually revealing something about the future, about reality, even if they're not conscious of it. It's really a way of making the unconscious conscious when we're putting stuff out there. And I think that's why like movies are so impactful, because it and when it's emotionally impactful, it's because there's something in our unconscious that's coming to light, that's becoming conscious, and that's why we relate to those things that we see. Do you think about the future of your channel? Have you thought about doing other types of videos, maybe even your own commentary? Like I know you've said you don't do a lot of on-camera stuff, but is there anything that you've thought about doing later on?
My problem is like I've got too many. I don't know if this is a problem for you, but for me it's like I've got too many ideas. You know, there's too many things that I would like to do. And again, it's the tricky thing of like, I'll just put it bluntly, like, do you want to make money, or do you want to, you know, I don't want to make it sound like do something completely authentic, because then it seems like I'm being inauthentic for making money. I know some artists have that dilemma of like, you know, if I'm doing it for the money, then I'm being commercial, or I'm for some even they might be like I'm selling my soul, you know. But I think of it more of a pragmatic thing of like, well, if I'm going to be investing my time, you know, I want some sort of return on doing something, you know, like I don't. And so I guess when I say doing it for the money, it's not so much that it would be inauthentic, but it's just like, what kind of endeavor do I want to do? Because there are things that you can do, you know, just have a better possibility and odds of success versus doing something else, is what I'm saying. So
yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah,
so that's more so what I'm saying. I don't want to say like, you know, like it is like that extreme of a thing where it's like doing something strictly for money, because the thing of it is like I enjoy what I'm doing now. I love what I do like, I like it a lot. But is it the thing that I want to do for the rest of my life? No, it's not. I don't have any intention of making these videos until I die. Like, this is not this, if this is my contribution to society, which, not to sound like, overly like uh, egotistical or anything like that, but I'm just saying, as one little person in this little world and this little existence, if I'm going to have to say something, like, I don't want this to be the thing that I'm known for either. And not to say what I'm doing, like, the way I think of it now, I think what I offer people is popcorn, and popcorn's good. But it's not the weight of or as nutritious as a steak or some other kind of food, and so I'd like to give people something a little bit more to chew on and to think about, and that's all. That's just more of a
That's a great analogy. Yeah. And it's like, it seems like right now you've found your niche. It's something that works, that you have a lot of fun doing, and you'll know if you want to, when you want to do something new. But I'm just it's inspiring, and it's really cool to see that, like, you really found something that you like and is giving you the creative and the financial freedom that you need. I think that's, and that's been the game changer for artists with YouTube, is that it is a way for artists to finally do what they've struggled with for so long, which is, being compensated and having financial freedom to do what you love creatively. I think before YouTube and social media, like, that was just that was sometimes just nearly impossible for artists, or it was just always very difficult, because I think these memes have been a very good way of getting around censorship. But you recently ran into some censorship, and your main channel, John Talks, you haven't been posting on that. Now you're on John Talks 2. So what happened there?
So the channel got hit for reused content, which is, it's really a big gray area. And what I probably failed to do was put out like a good, I probably could have put out a better appeal video. I thought the thing was just stupid to begin with. But I think there's some, now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably like because I've reused my own content. So I did a best of 20, top 23 of 23 series at the end of the year. And I'm wondering if I got hit for reusing my own content. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've posted videos, like sometimes I would repost things. Now I think it's a mistake. Like, I don't necessarily think it's something nefarious or intentional on YouTube's part. Mm-hmm. It could be. I'm not ruling that out either. Like, I'm not saying that it couldn't be, but I personally think it's probably their automated system that, for whatever reason, found what they consider to be reused content. Now, the thing of it is, on YouTube, you can use clips, you can use things from news sources, as long as you're creating something original from those clips. You're telling a story, or you're it's some humorous rendition, remixing of things. Like you can do, like, it's okay to use clips, but you just have to you have to be creative with it. But yeah, so now I'm on the other extreme, where my videos are even, like, they're taking a little bit longer because I'm like overly cautious. I'm putting music in the background of things, like, even a little bit more, like, even if it's just, I'm making creative decisions that I wouldn't be making, and that I don't, I would be doing the videos differently if I didn't if I wasn't as paranoid about getting hit for reuse content.
It makes you paranoid. It's made me paranoid like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reuse content was something I ran into like a couple of times. The first time I tried to monetize my channel, that happened. So I like changed the thumbnails and redid the titles. That seemed to work. So I was monetized for quite a few months. And I was putting out memes every day. And then I don't know what it was exactly, but I got a strike on my channel for this one video where I was talking about the vaccine, and I included this clip of Bill Gates in this TED Talk. It's like a clip that they've been trying to scrub from the internet. I won't go into too much detail about it, but they gave me a strike for that, and then they demonetized my channel for reused content. And then the thing is, they don't tell you what it is specifically. So I was really on a roll, and it was like, man, this is really a bummer. Now I can't monetize. So I'm in the process of trying to remonetize, but with very different content, with more commentary. A part of me is like, is this just an excuse that they're giving to like censor stuff that goes against the narrative? They're always going to be very abstract and very mysterious about it. So it's you just have to experiment. Like, there's really no consistency with them.
No, it's on the second channel. It's like I sent in the same appeal video because I got hit for reuse content on my second channel. This was a while back, but I resent the same appeal video. The first time it got rejected. I'm just like, you know what? I think it's still a pretty good appeal video. I'm gonna send it in.
Right.
Again, see what happens. It got approved. And so it's like, it could be a matter of like the person just they're making their subjective judgment on whether or not they think your appeal video is good enough or not, or your content, I mean, it really, it's frustrating, I think, for a lot of creators, because I think a lot of us would like, sure, there's definitely the rules. Like, it's not that they don't have the rules in place, but even some of those rules are kind of, it's kind of a little bit subjective too, in terms of how they're going to be implemented, or who's making those decisions on, what those rules mean and so forth. So the problem is, it's tough if you want to make, like, especially making political content. Like, if you're trying to make money doing it, it's just one extra thing.
Yeah.
Where it's difficult to do. And I would say too, even these videos take longer for me to do than when I was doing my commentary videos. And I would do like 10, 8 to 12 minute commentary videos. And whether it was about entertainment or even politics or whatever, those videos, I could put, even I would edit them afterwards. I'd edit out all the uhs or whatever, and just get, kind of tighten up the video.
Right.
The stuff I do now, like, you'd think for like a 45-second video or a 2-minute video, I think people assume like, oh, that's easy. When I was saying, because I basically put out videos for the string of like, I didn't take a day off in 2023, with the exception of one day. And that's why I did the top 23 of 23 series, because like I just wanted to kind of take it easy my last 4 days of the year. And I had somebody say like, like how much do you work? Like 10 minutes, you put out like, these 1-minute videos, or, something to that extent. And it's like, these videos take longer than any of the commentary stuff I ever did. Like,
they can take a while. Yeah. It's easy to underestimate the amount of work that can go into such a short video. I mean, even like YouTube Shorts, depending on the the production quality, it can be a lot of work to just into like a 59-second clip.
Yeah, it's was it Blaise Pascal or somebody said, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time. Are you familiar with that quote?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, where it's like, for me, I'm thinking in terms of watch time, and I'm thinking in terms of trying to keep the audience's attention the entire time. So, you're making these judgments of trying to figure out, like, you're trying to make every second count. Right. And there's a thoughtful process in terms of like picking out what you think is even worthwhile content. And it is this being like meticulous about your choosing of it and the editing of it and, the punchline or the gag at the end. All of these things are, it's just, there's a bunch of little decisions being made in that. And so it's like one of those things until you do it. And until you become like insane about the level of thought you're putting into it. It's like a minute of film usually takes like a day to shoot or whatever. It's kind of one of those things where you have no idea how many takes it took to get, that performance and all the work that put into the set, all that stuff. Now I'm not putting my work on that level, but it's kind of those things like we take it for granted, where we just eat up what's in front of us. But Stanley Kubrick took like 100 takes to get that one take of like Shelley Long on the stairwell of The Shining or whatever. It's like you're probably pretty meticulous about your work.
Yeah, everybody's a little bit different with their process, and that's just what's great, because you can draw so much inspiration from everybody else. Long form content is really something that I'm trying to get better at, but I think the short form kind of helped me get better at structure. So your memes were like, okay, this is a great way to get better at my story structure. Yeah, this has just been such a pleasure. I'm really happy that you've joined me for this discussion and that we could just talk artist to artist. I was surprised the direction this talk went, because I thought I was just going to ask you about your channel, but now we're just talking about art and like the struggle as an artist. It's really been a privilege and a pleasure to talk about that with you. So.
Oh, likewise. Yeah. If we just talked about my channel, that would have got boring really quick. So I appreciate that it went this direction. Hopefully I didn't talk too much. But Dylan, I just want to say thank you, man, for having this conversation with me and inviting me on your channel to do it. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm wishing you the best with John Talks 2 now, and I'm going to stay tuned, and I hope everybody else does. So for everyone watching, please go ahead and visit John Talks 2, stay updated, and John, can't wait to catch up with you again soon, and good luck in everything that you do moving forward.
Well, thank you so much, Dylan, and you likewise, man. I look forward to that documentary that you're putting out.
Can't wait to share it with you.
We want to thank today's sponsor, Dr. Stella Emanuel. If you remember her from 2020 amid the pandemic, she went viral when she went on with America's frontline doctors, accurately purporting that social distancing and masking was nonsense, and shared her firsthand experience successfully treating patients with hydroxychloroquine. And what did they do? Smear her, of course. Well, she was right. Using the code FIGHTERS, you'll get 5% off any of her detox kits, COVID care, and more. Go to drstellamd.com for a list of all of her products, and don't forget to use the code FIGHTERS for a discount.